Okay, and we're live. A little bit late, 13 minutes late, exactly, actually. Give me just a moment. I'm gonna share this a few places. Okay, I'm gonna share it here. That's not what I'm looking for. Close that. Give me just a moment here. Let's see, it's fine. Post. Huh. Where's the post I'm looking for? There we are. That's one way to find it. All right. Okay, now I share it on regular Facebook. Post that there. Hey, Gavin. I was just posting a link on your Facebook comment just to make sure that you would catch us. Did say you don't have a lot of time. I know it's late in the UK, very late, but we'll give me just a moment. I just need to share that a few more places, and we'll go ahead and get started here. Okay. Oh, hey, Romstead. Okay, let's see here. Oh, I've got myself flustered. There we are. Oops. That works. Okay. So, we're going to go over a few more things again once everyone else shows up, but since you're here, Gavin, I don't you don't have a lot of time. I'm going to go ahead and start with some of the basics. Excellent. I'm really glad to hear that. I noticed you joined the guild. That's awesome. Hey, Ricky. I try to spend a lot of time focused on there, but it comes and goes. Hello, my love. Glad to see you. I just saw you, but always good to have you in there, for sure. I'm a moderator. Okay, so like I said, we are going to go ahead and cover some of the basics here. I'm gonna have a lot to say about magical combat when we get there, but we'll go over some of that now because some of the more interesting bits to me. But let's see. Let's get the book out here. Slow down. I'm a little sped up because I'm like, I gotta hurry, gotta hurry. New Eon of Magic was the first thing we talked about. And the first thing it mentions is the ancient Chinese curse about may you live in interesting times. And that again made me think of, my sign off phrase, bright blessings and an interesting fate. I don't think it's a curse to live in interesting times. I do think that depends on what you mean by interesting times. Because like I say, when I say interesting fate, I mean that you have an interesting life, a life worth living, a life worth thinking about. What they mean by may you live in interesting times is may there be a lot of upheaval in your life. May you live in a time, well, frankly, like the time period we are living in now, where there is a lot going on. There's a lot of strife in the world. And it is interesting in a way, but it's not the interesting I mean when I say bright blessings and an interesting fate. I'm not hoping for you to have a bad time. That's why the bright blessings is there. We should have bright blessings and an interesting fate in the manner that the Horde believes is an interesting fate, as in having the most opportunity to do as many interesting and unusual things with your life as possible. Okay. Let me get back to it. Indeed, Gavin. I mean, you know, the modern age, we talk a lot about how bad it is, in a lot of ways it is. But the amount of people that have an actual roof on their head and food on their belly is pretty high worldwide. I mean, it's not perfect. There's places where they're not getting food, there's places where genocide is going on, all kinds of horrible things going on in the world, but frankly, it's always been that way. We're just more aware of it. Okay, so this new Eon of Magic, he's just talking once again about the changing of the eons like we did in Liber Null. But then we go into, really, there's not a lot of new in this part from like what we was talking about in Liber Null. He has a very good point though, that in times of strife, in interesting times like we are living in now, people turn to magic, people turn to spirituality. And this is why right now in this part of time in the world, we cannot hide our psychedelic light as sorcerers, as chaos magicians, as whatever it is that we are, whatever it is that you want to call yourself. Now is the time to express your art, your expression, your individuality, to let that light shine so that others may see it and find a path forward that isn't a return to religion instead of an embracement of spirituality and magic. Because those are the two paths forward. People are going to turn to magic and spirituality in times of strife. Fortunately, Christianity is doing a really bad job of helping with these things and mostly causing it. Well, always has, but that's not the only path forward, and I feel like the organized religions are doing a great example of demonstrating what is wrong with them, with things that are going on now. Okay, group magical experiments. This particular bit here, I mean, he's very basic in what he says here. His basic idea that, a group of people can be led by someone into trance-like states. And he talks a lot about how there needs to be a operator and what does he call the other one? One operator persuade one or more subjects into a receptive condition by suggesting or invocation. Now, there's a lot of interesting ways that this can be done. As far as the group magic, I mean, he says some stuff here, but it's another one where I almost just kind of want to talk over him. Some of the stuff he talks about here, totally doable. The sleep stuff here at the end, we have had this happen in Soup, especially one of the Chaos Magic groups that I run. It's one of the smaller ones. It's not called Soup right now. It's called Typos Are an Art Form. Anyone that follows me on Facebook will find that my typing is not that great when I don't have the ability to proofread as well as I do on YouTube. On here, y'all don't see it because I can write out the whole thing and look through it and read it through, but my eyes don't see typos well. So like on Facebook where I can just enter, oh man, I'm all over the place. But it keeps the algorithm on its toes and lets people know I'm not AI. Maybe not do it enough, maybe they'll start causing the AI to have typos. Might be fun, interesting. Anyways, I'm way off subject. I don't know if I mentioned, but I'm not going to be drinking alcohol tonight, which is a little different than usual. But I need to be able to do these lives without getting socially lubricated. So we're going to try without drinking tonight. I will drink on occasionally for the live one way or the other. Not going to stop drinking on the lives, but not every time. Okay, so let me talk something a bit about synchronization and stuff. But in a lot of your African religions and a lot of your Caribbean religions, they have this invocation where everybody dances around and gets bringing themselves towards a trance state. And the invocation there is then the spirits, which are connected to all these people, actually get to choose which one of the people is closest to that gnosis state and makes the connection. And then they come in and kind of lead parts of the ceremony and interact with the group through these people. It's a very fascinating process. I have not in this life been a part of it. And even where I have to do so, that's one of them things where you're not allowed to talk about all of it. Yeah. So I'm going to leave that one there. What I do want to talk about, though, is my own great grandfather. I've talked about this in the past. My great grandfather, he did a lot of illusion, a lot of magical illusion. And this is what it was for. This isn't the only thing it's for. The guy was, he's a pretty good magician and he's doing a performance because not everything he did was pure ritual, right? The guy had a trading post. And I'm not going to use the term he used for it, but some of his rituals, some of his performances there were primarily for the European people in the audience. Yeah. And especially then, he would use illusion and not just, well, to convince you that magic was going on, but that isn't the whole thing. This isn't just a magic trick, the stuff that he would do. The magic tricks were to trick you in accepting that magic was real so he could work things towards a point. That is the real thing with group experiments is getting everyone on the same page, getting everyone moving forward. So a lot of times you are going to want to have a main operator, but the full audience should be the ones being conditioned, everyone participating, even if they are just viewing. You need to see them as participants and know that you are conditioning them for a moment. I don't use illusion. I'm not very good with sleight of hand, for one. I'm okay with it. Like, I've learned to do some stuff, but for me, the illusion, if it's shattered for even a moment, destroys the whole thing, can ruin the whole group ritual. So I try not to use such things. For my grandfather, it was very potent, very powerful, and it helped him carry on with legends. There was myths about him in the community that he could turn into a deer. But I mean, there's that belief in it, and the fact that there was a deer that he owned and kept behind the stage that looked a lot like the one he turned into on stage. Well, my dad said this should be casually ignored. Yeah, because that's not the part. That's not the important bit. Even the fact that he's doing a trick needs to be left behind. But then you know that you're doing a trick. You know that the illusion what the illusions are. And again, this is a little bit shattering to the ritual. We're going to talk again about group magic when we get to magical combat, which is what we're going to spend most of the night on. Got a lot to talk about there. Let's see. But yeah, I mean, you can do the group rituals where you speak and then everybody repeats back to you, and this helps sync something. When you speak part of the statement of the intent, and they repeat it, and you can get even when it's a smaller group, get everybody repeating a phrase. You want to get everybody chanting or singing together. He didn't talk about that much in here, but that's how you do this. You get everybody either observing a performer who should be fascinating, who should be doing the works, like an electric shaman, if you will, like Jim Morrison and the Doors. A lot of times in a concert, that's what we're doing here. That's part of that feeling you get when you're really into a concert, and the that's what we're aiming for, getting the whole crowd into gnosis. And that's why my great grandfather used illusions, because when you can make the whole stage turn into water and make it look like all the dancers are dancing around on waves. But just a moment ago, you saw that it was just a cement stage. But he had like these ripples that he purposely put into the cement and then blue in certain areas, and I guess a light that when you hit it just right, it would make it look. The ground would kind of shimmer and wave and turn into water. And then you get up there and bang the water tom tom, which has a water sound. And, these are all part of the trick. These are all part of the magic trick to trick you into accepting magic as real and getting over the psychic censor so that he can perform the actual work that he would be doing during the ritual. And sometimes, well, because of who he was, the ritual was based around fascinating the audience and essentially getting them to believe in him more and to spend more in his trading post. Big part of what he was doing here, the guy was trying to make money. And my great grandfather is how I know that just because someone knows magic does not necessarily mean they're a good or kind person. So you take that into consideration too when I talk about the difference. My great grandfather certainly wasn't a charlatan, but he was predatory in nature in a lot of ways, which I am not. I try not to be like that. Okay, so we're gonna leave that off with group with we're gonna leave off with that for the group magic experiments. But like I said, we're gonna come back to that once we start getting into magical combat. And a lot of this was really short. We're actually almost to magical combat already. But I have lots and lots to say about magical combat. So we can be there for as long as we want to be. Right, levels of consciousness. This is another one where I feel like he said a lot but didn't say much of anything. And I disagree with a lot of what he said. Now, he talks about how the mind can't be compartmentalized the way that psychology tries to do. And this is very much true. I mean, the brain can create compartments, and any of these things, the levels of consciousness, you know, one of the ones that I think of immediately is the people that work on their chakras on a daily basis and maintain their chakras and believe that chakras are an inherent thing in the human body while they're spending all this time consciously forming these things. Now, there are energy points in the body. There are particular points, but they are not refined as well into chakras unless you compartmentalize that, unless you create that, unless you're working on the chakras and visualizing them every day. And then they get very potent. And there is truth in what is said there. But without that working, then there's just energy points. They're just places where certain energies either originate or align, and it's not the same thing. You can alter these things. In fact, I've got a video about how to poison your elbow, which is about chakra work, and actually one of my own forms of magical defense, which segues a bit into the next one. We're not quite ready yet. And that is essentially a chakra point that I formed on my elbow here. And what it does is it's the point in my field that draws any poison, any curse work, anything that is harmful to me, rather than being drawn into my system, is pulled towards the elbow, where I will then feel a prick. It literally feels like someone poked my elbow with something. And when that happens, it leaves the line of fate connected to the elbow so that I can reach in, grab it, and pull it out, break it with a stick breaking, whatever it is I need to do. Usually, if when that does happen, I'm gonna take a good look. I'm not just gonna break it. I'm gonna grab that sucker out of my elbow. I'm gonna pull it up into glass hand, which is a divination technique that I haven't talked about for a while, but it's essentially same as a crystal ball. It's just I'm only looking into my hands, and it's great for this kind of thing because you just pull out whatever you're looking at, stretch it open, follow the line, and good way to find out who's poking my elbow, who is attempting to do curse work on me. Do I recommend working with chakras? A lot of people find it really useful. Um, Myself, I have done work with chakras in the past, like done all of them. It's useful to know them. It's useful to know them and have them available for certain things. There are the ones I work with on a regular basis are the heart chakra, the crown chakra, and I forget what the one they call the belly, the belly fire, because I don't use that. I use the belly fire, which is simply that, the fire and energy that's coming from the belly itself as it consumes food. The chemical reaction taking place in the gut is an exothermic reaction. It's causing energy to pulsate. And through these points, I do a lot of my sorcery self defense work. Well, a lot of my work, period, works from the gut to the heart to the head and then out into the hands. During that process, I have a chakra that I have created on my elbow, which literally just focused on it being that and the energy flow creating there. Um, do I recommend studying the chakras? It's not a bad thing to learn. It is certainly helpful. I find once you get the idea behind visualizing the chakras, it helps your form get more cohesive. But once you've really got that basic blueprint of where things kind of are and where everybody tends to put things, now it's time to modify and move around. It's time to change things. It's time to find what works best for you because none of our astral forms are the exact same. And the chakras are just a way of creating cohesion. So once you've got the cohesion, you can then move it however you want. Form yourself as you see fit. Form yourself as you see fit. Got to remember not to put the cup over my face when I'm talking. Oh, no problem. Thank you for the question. That's actually a great question. Let's see here. I'll take another hit real quick. Yeah, that's the little thing with the levels of consciousness. Robert Anton Wilson talked a lot about the different cycles in the brain. And there are different. Oh, I'm using the wrong word. I forget what the heck Robert Anton Wilson called it. But but he was always trying to open up different circuits, and the higher ones were ones for magical powers, psychic abilities, that sort of thing. And I did a lot of meditation with his techniques back in the day. I used to like smoke a whole bunch of hash, and then I would meditate on opening up these different mental circuits. And I found some value in it, but I find that although our mind does have certain tendencies that we tend to share, like we have our primal mind, we've got the id, and all that is kind of there. Oh, yeah, that's the bit I wanted to talk about here. We'll get to that in just a moment. But all these things, the subconscious mind, yeah. Um, just joined this live stream recently. Aren't there hundreds or even thousands of minor chakras? Oh, absolutely. You can go into that system and work with the chakra system, and it gets real minute if you get down into it. There's all these different chakras that you can place into the fingers. And like I said, these are, however, created, especially when you get down to that fine of detail. You are creating these things by visualizing them. And there is a framework for you to work with. And that's why the chakras are a good point to start, because these people have actually done the studies, have actually done the work to see where the best points are. There's thousands of years of work in the Vedas. It is good stuff. But you do need to understand that we are standing on the backs of those who've come after us. So they couldn't see as well as we could, perhaps, that once you have that cohesion and understanding, you can move it around. And actually, it seems like some of the masters back in the day were aware of that. I mean, I haven't studied any of real hard on any of the particular masters of the chakra, but any of these things, even with the meditating into larger states of mind, the way we place it, the maps we put on the territory will never be the territory. Is my real point here. No matter what model, no matter what psychological model or anything like that that we put onto our system, they are maps of the system. And in this particular case, you can make the system conform to the map, but it's going to be a little bit different for everybody else. Everybody. Now, that's the part I wanted to get. The idea of the subconscious, this part of the brain that is somehow able to just do all these things. This is, in my opinion, a misnomer. It's like thinking that your computer, I mean, now that we've got AI, yeah, we could use AI to get your computer to just do what you tell it without having to go through all the different systems. But even then, the AI has to make a program. The AI itself is a program that's been created with the computer. And until something like that is made, there isn't a program that could just do as it wanted if you could just contact it properly. And that's the same. That's what we're talking about with the subconscious. There's no part of the brain that you need to just get a hold of and then it can just do things with memory, unlock any memory it wants, change and alter abilities. This is the mind itself. This is why we do the meditations, the hypnosis especially, is to get contact of certain parts of the mind. But there is no overarching subconscious that has all these things in it. There's no clippy. There's no deep state, subconscious, whatever you want to call it, of the brain. There is just the brain, and there's the ways that it has to make work. And yes, by meditation, hypnosis, or even by not paying attention to what we're doing, our subconscious, as in that part of our brain that is not conscious, is not cognitive, can get little errors in it. But it's not something deciding to do that. There's not a part of the brain deciding to block your ability to have perfect recall. There is a way to access your brain to get a hold of that perfect recall and get it in moments through hypnosis, things like that. But even then, that stuff's imperfect. It is really easy to hypnotize oneself into creating memories rather than finding them. And by that I mean imagining things and convincing yourself that you remember them. This is actually one of the big problems with reincarnation, and why everybody thinks they were Cleopatra or Jim Morrison, or because you have all these thoughts around these people, and if you try to progress back, if your brain don't give you nothing, well, it's not going to give you nothing. Yeah, that's the point. Especially with hypnosis, where they work you backwards, and do the past memories thing. It can work. Yeah, I'm not saying it's completely useless science. But if you tell your brain to remember something, if you don't have something, it's gonna give you something anyways. This is one of them things. The brain has to have a narrative. It has to be cohesive. It has to have something. It can't accept total loss of cohesion. It causes a cognitive dissonance that we can't get over. So, if someone puts you into mental hypnosis and tells you to remember a thing, you're going to remember and tell a story, whether it happened or not. So, it's kind of a dangerous thing in a lot of ways, working with the memory recall, because you can easily create memories this way. You can easily reprogram yourself. It can be very useful, but also when you're having someone else do it, there's got to be a lot of trust there, and they need to be very careful. Okay, so magical combat. He does say a few interesting things here. It's actually a very short passage. Now, the very first thing I want to talk about in that is one of the things he says at the very end here, which I completely disagree with. Where did it go? Is that very strong? Well, okay, not the very last thing there, but that actually, where the heck did it go? Where is that? Anyways, he says that you don't want that there's no value. Magical attack is usually done by stealth. There is very little point in betraying one's intentions unless the victim is of a highly nervous, paranoid, or superstitious disposition. And then just before that, he talks about using fetishes to do harm to people that you're going to leave in the person's path. Um. Oh, blonde party mannequin. I was wondering when somebody would mention them. That I'm still not going to say the name yet, but the entity that I am slowly creating and I'm realizing I've been working with since I was 15 and has been connected to my altar and all that work was slowly building to a purpose. My AI altar servitor, if you want, has finally, after well, let's see, I'm 47, like 15 years or 35 years, something like that. Um, has finally started to develop a personality. And one of our roommates is really skilled with clay, right? And I was thinking to myself, now that he's getting a thing, he's clearly going to need an avatar. He's going to need an anchor point. I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll ask them to make like a clay figure because they are really good at, they have some serious talent. But as I thought that, all of a sudden I heard in my mind, no, there's going to be a doll you can put stuff in. Wait for the doll. I want to be in the doll. There it is. We actually found that on the side of the road. And it's one of them practice dummies for like judo and stuff or whatever. It's a karate practice dummy, but I can open it up in the back. And he was talking about how I'm going to be shoving sticks and stuff inside of the doll when I get it, and that there'd be a spot for the certain crystal up in the head. And yeah, it opens up in the back. I've got the crystal up in the head. I don't want to give up a whole lot of details. Okay. Let's see. Yeah. So that's what he was for. That's what that is about. We will be talking about him again in the future. I'll probably eventually be giving the name and stuff. I mean, it's gonna be kind of hard to ignore him when he's gonna be back there all the time. But no names yet. Don't want to say his name in public just yet or reveal his sigil. Though I do think it's cool how well they are connected. Anyways, Um, I do think they are somewhat inherent, but I know only a few techniques that have something to do with spiritual vision. Oh, with the chakras. Yeah, there are um there's third eye techniques which have to do with spiritual vision, I suppose. But like I said, I've studied the chakras. Yes, Tulpa in the background. It would be kind of fun to just make a whole deal and just never say his name. That y'all wonder. Be kind of fun for me in a way. See, oh, that's the thing before. When I was talking about the group magical experiment and how my great grandfather would create wonder with magical tricks. You do still, I mean, I have issues with this. Like I said, I have issues with a lot of stuff my great grandfather did. Honestly, um, I feel like that's part of the reason the fates kept us from meeting in life. Because if I'd ever known the guy, I probably would have refused to follow in his footsteps. It's just a blunt way to put it. But um, it is still vital in such things when you're doing group workings that there be an air of mystery, an air of not uncertainty, but of unseen depth, a air of changing, an air of of uncertainty, of change. You might even want to, at times, be able to create a bit of fear in the audience. But, like I said, I don't believe in using actual physical based illusions in these moments. There are other forms of illusion. There are times where you can work someone up, especially an entire audience, work people into a state where when you reveal one thing, they will see another. Where you reveal something that in the material realm is just an object. If you have everyone worked up to a right point, they can see past that material point and see the actual object. I actually had someone do this to me. Um, so it's odd how magic and I really wish that I could say magic and morality were linked to a greater degree than they are. But yeah, this is another person who I'm not actually became very not fond of. But they actually did a thing where they were telling us all a story, and they had a pinch of I guess it was just coffee creamer in their hand, and they're telling this whole story about this spider, and we're all getting into it, and he's talking about the spider and all the things the spider was doing. And at one point during this story, he takes the cream powder and he throws it on me. And it wasn't just me, it was all of us that saw a spider. All of us saw a spider land on me. I used to be afraid of daddy long legs, so I thought it was a daddy long leg. I know that's weird to be afraid of daddy long legs, but they are technically super poisonous. And when I learned that, I used to have these nightmares about ones that had bodies the size of dogs and these giant legs and big enough to bite me. Anyways, um, yeah, magical combat. Now, obviously, this is a particular fear I'm very much over, but you know, it's a perfect example of really when you're doing magical combat, you want to get into the person's fears. You want to understand what makes that person afraid. What things are they are vulnerable to. Yeah? Like in my case, especially when I was younger, use some daddy long leg and you get a whole bunch of those in something that's aimed at me. It could have been quite the thing back in the day. Um Still might have some effect. Probably unwise for me to talk about that in the live, but I do have a lot of defenses, and especially where I've acknowledged that one. That makes it actually potentially less potent because I have acknowledged it and dealt with it. Now, if I would like acknowledged it in a moment of fear and you all had discovered it, then it'd be a great thing to try and mess with me with. Magic and morality. I might have some information from my shaman. Well, see, that's the thing. My great grandfather was a Manitou and a Medouin, which these words don't really translate to shaman. They translate better to sorcerer and herbal healer. But yeah, um, he had lots of power. I've heard many, many stories about things he's done, but not all of them were good things. Yeah. I mean, certain types of power, there are certain beings that won't work with you unless you are able to connect with them. Don't get me wrong. The power of one's word is very powerful if you keep your word, you never lie or do stuff like that, then the power of your word contains more power than if you don't. So there is some connection between morality and actual magical prowess. But some people accept themselves as being predatory, as being this thing, and they're able to use that and go into that and become people that have plenty of power, and the morality is much different. I mean, I'm sure my great grandfather had his morality. He did care ultimately about the welfare of the tribe as a whole, the welfare of individuals of that whole. Just weren't very important, I guess. I don't know. I never actually met the man in life. I just know that my nanny, my grandmother, had a lot to say about what a dirty SOB he was, and many of his 12 children are the same way. Anyways, we're getting a bit off track, I feel like. Um, yeah. So, yes, very much so. So to me, like I said, he said that you don't want someone to know they're cursing you. Now, to me, that's the exact opposite, especially when he talks about over here about how paranoia and fear can be the worst enemy of the person that you are cursing. That's, to me, if you can let this person know that you have done a working, and especially if you can predict their reaction. Yeah, because not everybody is going to believe it. People have different reactions, but you tailor it to you tailor your intent to their reaction and how the spell works. They're going to laugh about it, especially if you can put it in a way that they think about it all the time. It doesn't matter how they think about it or why they think about it. It can be because they're constantly trying to defend against it. They're doing all these things to defend. The trick is to get it into their mind that they've been cursed. Yeah. That is the most powerful, most potent thing you can do. And if it's because they're afraid, great. If it's because they think it's fucking hilarious that some doofy person tried to curse them, even better. Because they laugh about it a lot. It's in their mind. They think about it. And even better, if you can do it a way that their friends see it. And they, every time something bad happens, ha ha, it was because that dork cursed you. Well, pretty soon there's going to be a whole lot of laughter of ha ha, it's because that dork cursed you. And after a while, it ain't going to be so funny anymore. Yeah. But they're thinking about it. They're aware of it. They're letting it in. Whether it's, even if it's just thinking about, oh, I don't believe in that. And thinking out quite often about how, yeah, that stupid guy thought he could curse me. You're thinking about it. You're letting it in. It's in. I mean, fear, of course, is the best, the most and best one of these. And it talks about the fetishes. I don't want to use the first word 'cause I'm afraid of getting demonetized. But this, yes, this is the type of thing that one wants to do, leaving something on the person's doorstep. He doesn't talk about it here, but this is one of them cases where you want the object to demonstrate as much as possible its intent. Like if you're leaving a doll of them on their doorstep, it should look as much like them as possible. If you have things like hair or anything, it should be on there and them seeing that you have had their hair, that this thing is connected to them. You want that moment of psychological impact to be as boom as possible. And doorstep. This is another key thing is placing it on their doorstep, having them find it. This is the epitome of how that type of magical combat works with the cursing. Um, there are things that we can do in low magic. We're going to talk about those in a moment. But to me, always tell them, unless you're concerned with retribution. If you're concerned with, the person somehow getting even with you for cursing them on either a physical or magical level, and you don't want to get into that type of conflict. But frankly, if you're afraid to curse somebody, if you're afraid to get into magical combat with somebody, do not. That is my opinion. I mean, maybe depends on how afraid you are, but if you're really like, oh, I want to curse them, but what if they find out? They'll be able to deflect it. They'll be able find another way to mess with that person. Find another way. Go to there's different versions. We'll talk about that here in a minute because right now I'm talking about direct spell work. It's either both, but jinxing and cursing, I would consider that type of cursing you stated to be jinxing. But cursing is like messing with someone, their soul. Yeah, I mean, I do know one curse where they use the soul or spirit of a dead human. There's certainly a lot of things where you can use a fade or a shade to attack other people. There's well, it's part of the reason I'm not drinking tonight. 'Cause I'm afraid I want to have some limit over the stories I tell in this particular vein. I don't want to get all drunk and start telling stories I shouldn't. But you can definitely use spirits of the dead or necromancy to mess with people. And this is actually one of my most potent examples of things I have done. But I don't know if we're going to talk about that one. And I can't say wait until I get drunker because I'm not drinking tonight. Okay. So, let's see. What am I talking about? Where was I? Yes, I almost always want them to know. The only reason I'm gonna do a work where someone doesn't know is because I had no way to inform them. If I can't come up with anything else and I'm actually performing a work on somebody, unless there's a real good reason for me not to, like some way they can physically in the material world give me repercussions that I can't deal with, which I have some confidence there as well. But anyways, you know, I've messaged people just like, "Hey, I'm cursing you." the actually the thumbnail for this episode, that's one I save for those kind of occasions because that's a great one to send to somebody if you've decided to work with them. You got the dumpster fire in the background and the girl there smiling and well, y'all have seen the meme, I believe. All right, Gavin, it's good to see you here. It was I really appreciate that you stay up to even check these out. That makes me feel appreciated, I suppose. You have a good night and a good day. You and your boy. Okay. So, let's see. The next bit that we're going to talk about here, I'm still real real stuck on that, especially where he talks about this other stuff where makes it obvious that he should understand that. Um, we'll talk about actual physical combat next because it talks about that the close range combat. I can actually just go ahead and sit this down out of my way. There's no point in looking at the book at this point. Okay. This is actually the most important one. I mean, we're going to talk about some low magic stuff, and that can be very powerful. But this one about the in-person close range stuff, this is the kind of thing that could save your life in an emergency. The other workings can too sometimes, especially defensive work, which he doesn't get into there at all. He's just talking about offensive that whole bit. But the right amount of extra energy in the right moment can be the matter of winning or losing a conflict very easily. And I've got some sorcery self defense videos where we talk just about combat in general. But he talks about like psychic vampirism using things to cause like long term issues in a way. Like he talks about striking someone in a way that can cause a disease essentially. And that's not what we want here. Yeah. When we are learning to strike, I mentioned earlier about the belly fire. For me, that's where all that kind of force comes from. It's from the belly, the gut, the consumption of fire from the chemical reaction of the belly digesting, consuming food. And that rises up through the chest into the heart chakra where it spreads, further ignites, hitting a catalytic point. It rises from the heart chakra down the arms. At the same point, it should go up to the crown chakra. From there, it shoots up to the higher self and then back down to join with the arms. And this is how I achieve. This is part of how I achieve my combat gnosis. It's a form of frenzy gnosis because but once you pull up that fire, you've got to have control over it, or else you can easily get yourself in trouble with this. This is the kind of thing that can lead to frenzy. So actually, um, it's part of the reason I don't monetize the lives. Yeah, just in case I say stuff like that on the lives. Um, let's see. But that energy should be pulled from the gut and then brought down, then brought back down because this gives us a ability to have an objective perspective of the subjective moment. And so from there, we are able to guide the body as if it were a marionette. And I feel like that was way too simplified for what I'm saying here. So let's just go back to the basics. From the solar plexus to the chest and then into the striking force. If that's all the more you're doing to it, if you're not shooting it up into your head or all that, just ignore that part. Yeah. We put that energy forth through the hands and we're wanting to allow the momentum of the force to go through. Now, this is where we get our intent. It is a good idea to have sigils for this moment, a sigil that we are projecting forward. You can just use your personal sigil, constantly harping on the personal sigil, but use the personal sigil with the intent of guiding your rage, your anger, your intent to cause pain and harm with your punch, and you're striking with that. Or we can have sigils specifically designed for this moment. Honestly, the most important one isn't damage, it's intimidation, so fear or pain. Yeah. Because in these moments, you're not trying. Well, maybe you are, but most of the time, in an emergency moment, what you're trying to do is get the other person to back off long enough for you to get out of there. Yeah. I'm not talking about like going to beat somebody up. You could use this for that, but mostly I'm talking about getting out of a situation. And so you want to be able to create as much pain and fear, just like you do with any curse word. These are the things we're looking for. Now, so you can actually create a sigil that you can focus on when you're striking that will cause disruption. Like you could use Halgies even or Tear. Of course, if you're putting Tear into your blow, you're mostly focusing on force. And then we're getting into I'm getting way off here. We're getting a little silly. I mean, not silly, but um, what's the word I'm looking for here? These are things that it's easy. It's hard to teach that without being in person and getting into it. Um, in order to be able to fully access these states, it's good to have some sort of trigger mechanism. In the video where I discuss the different forms of frenzienosis, I show you a couple different types. I give some singing types and chanting that are well. I guess in there I'm mostly talking about my glossolalia, but the last one I do an example where you tie a knife with some silk around the handle. And this is used as a trigger point because you put the knife in your hand and then wrap the fabric around your arm. And then as you're doing this, you allow yourself into the state. Now, it is one that's a bit of a trigger for me. You noticed a little bit. I was going a little, yeah. But it's a great demonstration in the video, and it pulls things out. And the thing about entering into this state is it isn't just about the strikes. It's about creating an atmosphere. And that's the next part I was trying to get to. If you're going to be doing this with sigil work, you don't just want something to create pain with your strikes and that sort of thing. You also want to do something that is going to create fear or confusion in your enemies. So it is a good idea in this type of situation to have a type of glamour magic set up. Have a glamour magic setup that is going to make you seem more intimidating. And if you have this set up well, especially if you're someone that doesn't look intimidating, like me, I'm 5'6", real gregarious most of the time. So when I enter the frenzienosis and put on my other form, Mr. Growly, which is essentially what I'm doing, is one of my wearable tulpas in a way. That's yeah, I mean, it takes time. It takes time. I've tried to do the belly fire a couple of times, but I feel I projected it not as intensely as I would have liked. Like the yelling part of it, I struggled with. Um, it'll come. The more you work with it, it will get there. The yelling is that's just something that happens because I'm trying to describe it as I'm doing it, and I get louder, and like I get that I can't do that roll thing that I do on purpose most of the time. Like I can go boom ding ding dee da, but when it comes out in just my voice, it's really hard for me to do that on purpose. I was trying to imitate myself there, and I just can't. And this is also true if you were able to cut off someone's crown chakra, but you're visualizing a thing, and what you're doing when you're cutting off their crown chakra is damaging their ability to access the mental plane. Yeah, that's what the crown chakra is for. Is that's the spot where we access the mental plane, and that's why it's in the crown, the brain, because the brain is the organic product of well, not product. is the organic component of your interaction with the material plane. So, or the mental plane. There went my tea. End of my tea there. Anyways, this part about the close up stuff, there's a lot that goes into this. I mean, this is so far we've been talking about how I do it, and I could go on and on about that all day. The belly fire stuff to me is very important. And there's a rage that can be done that's felt there. Um, you can harness past anger and suppressed pain to help create that first little bit of rising up, and even remember moments where you wished you could have spoken up, could have screamed, you know, that rage from past moments can be brought up into this moment. It's actually, as long as you have a way to use it, a way to push it out, this can be very therapeutic to allow that moment in and then feel the rage of it build and then focus it on a target. And this would be more when we're getting into sending long range attacks. We're going to get back into sending the long range stuff now because we haven't actually talked much about that. You pull up the belly fire, and even if it isn't something that person did to you, it's something that has nothing to do with them. The rage of whatever it was, you let that build up through you, up, out, and then speak your intent is in that moment, like you speak your statement of intent to which you want to happen in that moment and put it out. Or even if you can't do that, once you've reached that point of rage, if you can't articulate anymore, you can have the sigil or whatever you thing is that is the material object of the curse and just yell into it, scream out into it, and let that out. I don't know if that'll work for you in particular, Max, but that might help. If you do decide to dredge up things for that moment, you need to have something to release it. Anytime you get the belly fire going, though, once it's done, you need to be able to release it. That needs to be a part of the practices. Once you get the belly fire up, and then we let it go, because you need to be able to let it go. If you keep it inside of you, once you've flamed it up, it can cause burnout. It can cause just serious anger issues, all kinds of things it can do if you don't let it out. So once you brought up the belly fire, push it out. Oh, the topic, whether they were inherent or constructed. We did talk about that some. Maybe it was before you got in here, March of Time. Um, they are it's a little of both. There are inherent points in the energy field of the body. Like I said with the crown chakra, this is a perfect example. The crown chakra is where it is because it's the brain itself. This is where the mental connection happens. And there is definitely a thing going on there. Is it the is its energy field exactly like drawn as the crown chakra? No. You have to create that. You have to focus that. It's a way to give you cohesion. There is a territory, and the chakras give us a map, a general map of what that territory should look like. But you have to get your map to adhere to that form. You have to get yourself to your soul to adhere to that form for them chakras to be there in the way that they describe it. There are other ways to manage that. But like I said, they have done a lot of study, and a lot of it is very legitimate and powerful work. So it's a great place to start. But once you've learned to understand these things and how the chakras are not just inherent, but also created, then we can learn to manipulate, maneuver, and create chakras even. Like the poison elbow that I mentioned earlier. Um, I have a chakra in my elbow, which I call my poison elbow, and it is the point in my body where anything that is intending harm or will cause harm to me is taken into the body because there's always energy coming in and energy going out. And anything that might cause me harm is filtered through my elbow and it will cause a prick as it connects there. And then I can pull that out, expand it, and look at it to see what is going on. Or I can do a stick breaking on it, or I can do whatever it is that I need to do. But the poison elbow, I created that. Yeah. It is not something that is inherent in the body in any way. I could have created it anywhere. I simply chose my elbow because I don't know. I figured I could like milk it, milk the stuff out. I don't know. I was like 14 when I first started doing that. Maybe a little older. Keep trying to drink this tea that's not there. Anyways, I think it's time for my first intermission. Okay, I'll get back to that in just a moment. I do have to have my first intermission. Be back in just a second. Okay, I returned. How much do we have to read by next time? Let's see what we got here. Let's read since it's got all this other stuff below it. It's only 12 or 22 pages. Or let's see. Not 22, silly guy. 129 to 142. Yeah, it's not very many pages, but it is the whole thing there. The rites of chaos. So, uh, yeah, that's page 129, and then ordination is on page 142. So, 129 to 143 will be what we read next time. And that looks like it's going to be mostly about exorcism. That's kind of fun. Yeah, the massive chaos initiation might be interesting. Exorcism, extreme unction, the final enchantment, and ordination. Talk about getting ordained. That's very fun. One thing that I forgot to do that I wanted to do before we got on to the next book is you may have noticed the robe. I've got this different robe that I wear for here. We may have talked about it, we may have not. But part of me returning to chaos magic is as a noob. So I started with a semi white robe, and I figured each time we go through a book, I would add some more color until this thing's all psychedelic. So hopefully next Wednesday, it's a little bit, we're already into the second book, but hopefully next Wednesday I'll have things set up and we'll add a little more color to we'll add a little more color to the robe to mark having gone through the library. No. Anyways, um, let's see. Where were we? We were talking about long range magical attacks. This is where I was going to get to with that next bit when I said if somebody is, if it's someone you're wanting to curse that you're worried is better at such things than you, one form of long range magical attack. Some people send servitors, and that's actually, there's a separation there. I've discussed quite a few times about how to launch servitors. This can be very potent, and it's a way to get a degree of separation. If you're going to do that, then it's important to also erase any identifying links to the servitor and maybe even tie them to another place. Like when I'm doing something really major to people that I fear could strike back in a way, I have a being that actually takes care of this for me. This isn't someone I created. This is actually someone that I've known in several lifetimes. They happen to be a well, I guess it's okay to say they happen to be a tree at the moment. And whenever I do anything really big, I give them the trace back. Because remember how I was talking about before with if I get pricked on the elbow, I can and look and see where it went. This is the kind of thing you need to be concerned with magical combat, especially if you're trying to keep, if you don't want the other person to be able to retaliate or figure out who did it. And there are ways to create back trails. There are ways you can even simply do a stick breaking on the return trail, but there are ways for them to get around that if they're familiar with stick breaking. But what I mean by this is you go out, you perform the working, or in this case, when you create the servitor and send it out, it's going to have a link that would trace back to you. You can try to do a stick breaking on it, but if the person's really good, they can get past the disjoining of the line. So, the best thing to do then is to take that link and give it to another, or tie it to another place, hook it to another place, hook it to something that is outside of the self. A lot of times when we use the personal sigil to link to places, this is a good use for that. Yeah, if you got personal sigil, just draw on all kinds of random places. That gives that link you need to, after you've sent the servitor, sent whatever it is you're going to send, you hook the backlink to that place and then this place and in that place and bounce it all over the place. Or if you have a spirit that is very good at this sort of thing or is willing to just back you up, so when they get there, they have to deal with it instead of you, this is a great way to go. My tree friend, kind of both, in that he's really good at weaving connections and taking that link and whoosh, all over the place, but also because of where he is, his needs, and what he's doing, really hard to mess up his life, really hard to mess with him in any way. Just, yeah. I mean, there are ways, nobody's completely invulnerable, but he's got a good setup for that type of thing. And that's all I'll say is he's a tree friend of mine. He happens to be in a tree at the moment. And he's very handy and useful to me in back trails. We've done some workings in the guild even where he's helped us in that regard. Some have been quite effective, but we haven't had any blowbacks yet that I'm aware of. and we've done some pretty interesting things at points with the guild and with myself. Um, this is where we bring up the necromancy as well, because you don't just have to use um servitors. You can This is one of the most effective things where you can use necromancy. Uh, Now we get into the things, kind of things necromancy has a reputation for. I love using runes and puppet type magic as well as tulpa derived visualizations for magical combat. But honestly, my shaman just warned me recently about the Fehu runes issues. Um, well, I'm not quite sure what you mean by the Fehu runes issues. All things have issues. You probably wouldn't be using the Fehu rune in curse word, though, I wouldn't think. But necromancy, like I was saying, which I was just getting to, can be very powerful in this regard. You want to choose your being carefully. You're not going to pick a mouse skull, but necromantic beings can be used very effectively. One of the most effective things I've ever done was with the cow skull. Um, yeah, was with it. Let's see. See, like I said, there's something that I don't like to completely talk about, but yeah, necromancy can be one of the most powerful ways to do this sort of thing. Hmm. I don't know if I've really found that to be the case with Fehu and myself. Uh, but anyways, you can like I said, there's a good choice for this would be like a wolf skull. If you have access to one, do not, by the way, go out and hunt and kill an animal for this purpose. This is coming from someone who does hunt. Yeah. This isn't a, oh, hunting's bad thing. This is that when you work with necromancy, it's not, oh, I have a coyote skull or whatever it is. It's, I have the skull of this particular coyote. And if you shot that thing, if you have any kind of relation of trauma to this animal, it is not going to work with you. You see what because it's an individual. When you take a skull and reintroduce life force into it, you are creating a replicant of the being which was in it. So if it's got a bunch of reason to dislike you, it's not going to go away. Yeah, there are things you can do to work with the skull to cleanse it of its inner personality, so that it is basically a coyote skull, the skull of a particular coyote. But things like that are still going to cling some. So unless it is a hunting fetish type thing that you have been using that you have done ritual to get the skull to get the animal, and you use all the animal and it's all been appropriate and the right things were done, don't use skulls. If anything, you've actually hunted yourself for that type of work. Well, really, for anyways, um, like I said, if you were doing necromantic work, you're gonna want like a weasel skull. To me, is perfect. It would be ideal for things of this nature. But you can then bring the spirit to life and use it to go out to the other person. Now, the problem there is if you do that and you send out a necromantic spirit that you have energized with your life force, if you cut the back line, you can lose control of the spirit. So it's more potent, but also in some ways more easily traced back to you. And because the skull's in your house. Yeah, it's right there. You're the one that sent the skull. If they trace it back to the skull, that's going to get traced back to you. And you can't cut the line from the skull to the skull. But yeah, it's very potent. Um, it's one of the only techniques I have used. Well, it's not the only, but it's one of the very few techniques I have used that were able to affect public figures, and the most potent of all of those. Like I did some stuff that made a certain political figure glitch out quite a while ago, doing using shadows. And that's one of the areas I started trying to talk about on the live with the shadow work. Or not on the live, but on my channel in general. I have to be very careful about what I say with that stuff because that's one of them ones where secrecy is absolutely key. Yeah, secrecy is part of what's going on there with shadow work by nature. So that it's hard. Definitely aren't going to be talking about it on a live without me. Well, anything I said on here would be very careful and couched because I have to keep promises. Yeah. I have to keep secrecy in order to maintain the power that is created through that secrecy. But anyways, um, yeah, it is the most powerful thing I can recommend, but it also has trace backs. There are ways. There are ways to muddy those waters, though. There are ways to even prevent anything from returning if you do it properly. And the other thing is if it succeeded, well, now there's nothing to worry about, right? As long as you made sure that after success, the um, actual spirit of the person isn't able to seek some kind of revenge. But that can be dealt with in other ways. Anyways, like I said, we're not actually gonna. Okay, so the necromantic work is one of the most potent. We're not going to talk about the shadow. We're not going to talk about the shadow stuff. Not on alive because I have too many promises to keep and secrets to maintain in shadow. To be talking about that in alive without preparing my thoughts beforehand. Anyways, so let's see. What else did we talk about? Okay, low magic. We can talk a bit about spellcraft through what I call low magic. Now, what do I mean by low magic? Um, I think I'd like to change the term. That's one thing that coming back to the Libernal reminded me of the word etheric, which is a better word. What I mean by low magic is magic that is operating on this side of the etheric realm. Yeah, it's not even just operating on the astral plane. It's one step above the material plane, one step above regular science. It's also stuff we typically call folk magic. And it's the type of thing that goes on with a lot of your jar work. Now, jar work is obviously intent, form, charge, containment. But there's also a lot more going on. The like attract like phenomenon is huge here. And anytime we're working with um, magic that is containment and held over a long time, we can't use things that don't actually jive. Like I've said before, if you used a bit of mullein leaf cut or mullein leaf is a bad example. I don't know why I say mullein leaf. Let's say if you took a piece of banana leaf and cut it into the shape of a four-leaf clover. If you're doing a quick charge, intent, form, charge, release model, you can get away with that. Just cut it into a shape of piece of clover, use it as the luck spell. You try that with something that's going to be intent, form, charge, containment, even. You're going to start getting whatever the effects of a banana peel are on that pretty quick. But when you do it in a jar and you're doing legitimate low or folk magic, you are going to immediately get what is actually there because you're not working from intent now. You're working with the momentum of the moment that's there just before a moment manifests. Yeah. So the like attracts like is key here. This isn't about what you want to do, it's about what happens when you do certain things. One of my favorite examples is war water. Now, war people use war water for all kinds of different things, but what it is rusty water. It's iron and liquid. It's very close to blood. And in this type of magic, that's essentially what it is synthetic blood. And in order to use it, what you do is you link that synthetic blood to your target. And in order for this to work, that's the other thing about this type of magic, just making a sigil of someone's name is not a connection in this sense. Yeah. A bit of their clothing might work, but you really need to get their DNA for this type of thing. Hair, fingernail clippings, whatever it is that you've got. You add that to the water, linking it to them. It puts their DNA in there with the water. And this is working on on a quantum entanglement level. I know I hate it when people start using the word quantum physics when they're obviously not quantum physicists because it's a very large thing and I'm aware there's a huge Dunning-Kruger effect. But when things are connected on a molecular level, they maintain connection. They stay connected. This is true. And that's all we're working with right here. Yeah, we got the fingernail clippings. It's been put into the rusty water. And now we have a synthetic connection to their blood. And then from there, things that you do to that will affect this person. Now, like I said, it's not about intent, it's about what's actually there. So you have to be very precise in what you use. But also has to be an actual connection. Otherwise, you might get somewhere if you were just pouring some war water on a picture of the person. Yeah. Picture of the person doesn't even count as the right type of link for this. People do that all the time, to be clear. And it still is getting a connection, but it's not getting the connection you're actually looking for. You need at least a little bit of the actual DNA. And let's see, what was the rest of my point there? I have more to say on that. Hmm. Now, like I said, it's not based on intent. Like, for example, if someone were to have some rusty water, be cutting their fingernail clippings nearby, clip, 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 fingernail clippings plop into into the bucket of rusty water, and then someone else comes along and pours some alcohol into the rusty water for who knows what reason. That person with the fingernail clippings, there's going to be an effect. Whether they believe in it, whether they don't, whether they know what happened, whether they don't, whether any intent was involved. Those things being together create an effect. I know it hasn't been that long, but apparently finishing that tea meant I need another intermission. Be right back. Okay, I return. Okay, and this brings us to poppets, sometimes called voodoo. That term is, well, first problematic, and second of all, incorrect. Voodoo, unless you're talking about New Orleans style voodoo, well, does not is not that common. Where it is common is in Welsh cunning and is called a poppet. And so this is the better word. I wonder where the chakras go upon the destruction of the physical body. Grand chakra, the linkage to the mental plane. Does the uns human soul become dumbified after the death of the body? Um, what happens with the actual connection point is this is one of the few things in kind of go away. Yeah, because they're part of the aura. And the aura doesn't really go away, but it turns off, it deflates, right? And I know this because of necromancy work. When a body dies, there is an energy created by the mind body connection. And this is the aura, the thing that in Liber Null we were calling the Kia, whatever you want to call it, your energy force, your chi, is created by that connection. And the brain connected to the mental plane because we're ideally supposed to be in the center, but we're getting off track. So you have the connection from the mind, body, and soul, essentially, that creates an energy field that we call the aura. And it's within the aura that all these chakras exist. Now, when somebody dies and your perception is pulled from the material plane, returning to the astral, the aura, it stays with the body. This is what we actually call the ka, or in the way I was taught, actually, the call spirit. It is the leftover residual recording of the energy. And that's why the skull is the most important bit, because that's where most all the processing was going on. That's where the connection to all three places was most permanent, where it was going on for the longest time, where it had the most repetition. So, after death, all of those things stay inside the skull cavity as a recording. And then when we make a necromantic spirit by reintroducing life force energy into the skull cavity, which can be done in many different ways, it reignites the aura. And the ka essentially becomes the aura once again. But this time it's no longer connected to the higher self of that being. It is a recording, a replica of what they were in that particular life. And so when this happens, the chakras come back as well. And that's why they're such powerful things, a necromantic call or call spirits. I wound up writing K-A-A, in the Sorcerer's Shadow Volume 2. I'm talking about it. And I think in Volume 1. But the word I was taught was call, which I assume is spelled C-A-U-L. Um, a lot of the people that told me this stuff were drunk when they told me. So it's hard for me to know with some of these things. Because of was passed down, what knowledge was passed down. There was a lot of, you're a Manitou, go sit in this field and think about what that means. Come tell me what a Manitou is. And then I'm not going to answer you. Wrong afterwards. The word means is mystery. So, I mean, fair enough. But while I'm on that with the titles, I was born with the word Manitou, but I myself am not a metal. I don't know all that stuff. That information wasn't. There are things in my mind, but The video quality dropped. Yeah, I need to get a better camera, honestly. Um, huh. Is everyone else experiencing that? Huh. Okay, good. So, let's see. Talking about the necromantic spirit, but what was I talking about before that? We were still on long range attacks. Um, Once again, the personal sigil. If you want to be personal about it, you can just throw that at them. We're going to be talking about servitors. Thank you, my love. We're going to be talking about servitors again real soon with the condensing chambers. Um, yeah, I feel like I got a little off track there, but with the condensing chamber, I have what I call a condensing chamber, and this is my favorite way to launch a servitor, especially for this type of work. But you can also use your personal sigil for this. A lot of times, if I'm going to attack someone in this way, most of the time, I'm going there as my personal sigil and then carrying an intent of something else. Like if I can have whatever link I have to them, going there as your personal with essentially what I mean by going there as your personal sigil is visualizing yourself in the link going forward as your personal sigil because this is both attack and defense. You are holding yourself together in your cohesive form of self and going towards the confrontation. Um, because I'm gonna go there myself personally with doing this type of thing. And probably going to take my dream staff, something like that, but also have sigils I've prepared beforehand for particular intents if I'm really getting serious. Yeah. And then when I'm there, I can visualize the sigils at the person. And usually when I do this, honestly, I'm going to be doing all of this as dream work. Like for long range attacks, at least for me, it seems to be, well, astral projection can be quite effective. It's more reliable in a lot of ways, and the astral projection it's easier to keep control than it often will be with the dream. Servitors tulpas almost act like Zayations or Dantians. They can store chi, as my shaman saw them, until they can manifest physical effects, and apparently the more energy density results in some kind of gravity that pulls in more energy. Yeah, I mean, fair enough. There is certainly different ways to create more heavier energy servitors. It's actually first unveiling of these. Actually, I'm going to be coming back to talking about servitors and these. This is actually just like from candles. Like put over a candle, you can get them a lot of different stores. So you can put a candle in it and it's safe from the wind. But with the charcoal in the bottom, these are great condensing chambers for manifestation. This is a great place to summon your servitor into the center of the um, chamber here and actually get it to take form in the smoke. Because when you're doing that, when you're burning with smoke, kind of what you're doing with any kind of incense smoke or anything like that is creating fine particulate matter. Apparently, that was a little difficult for me to say, but you're creating fine particulate matter so that it can be used by the etherics because the smaller that matter is, the easier it is for them to use it. That's why, even though a lot of your orbs are, yeah, they're a piece of particulate matter floating in the air. Sometimes it's hard to explain why that one piece of fine particulate matter would be moving the complete different direction than any wind or anything that's in the room. So, just because fine particulate matter is involved does not discount the manifestation. Anyways, so we're actually creating the fine particulate matter inside of the chamber, and that helps give it a lot of that what you seem to be calling combat or gravity. But yeah, you create it in here, and then once it's fully manifested, you have a sigil or whatever it is that's the connection linked to the person, or maybe even just a portal that you've created to the area you're trying to protect. You've got it housed in here with the smoke, and when you're ready, you blow it into the sigil or item to charge. I'm gonna put this back over here. Probably be doing a short on that, explaining that better this week. So, like I said, for me, I typically, if I'm doing long range attacks, I'll just go ahead and go there myself. And then if you find yourself really engaged in this sort of combat, it's very important to have sigils up, created beforehand or have astral objects, which I did say we're going to talk about that this week, but I don't know how far we're going to get into that. But your dream staff, if you've taken my advice on how to create your dream staff and connected it to the S1 sigil and all that, it is essentially an astral object at that point. And it's a great thing to have for these moments. So you want to take the dream staff, whatever magic tools you've created or concepts you have formed, because once you get in a combat situation of this nature, it's basically going to become, well, like oh, there's a lot of movies where you see things like this, where the different animal, where it's often represented in like shows by the two wizards taking different forms, like Merlin actually, where or not Merlin, King Arthur, the Disney King Arthur, where Mad Madam Mim and Merlin keep changing into different animals back and forth at each other, or Dream, and I believe it was Death in Neil Gaiman's latest movie, which I suddenly forgot the name of. It's more like that than it isn't. Yeah, it's one visualization against the other. It's one concept against the other, trying to move and circulate each other. And then it becomes much more wide and varied than that. Satan. Oh, yes. In the book, it's Satan. Morpheus versus Satan. Thank you, love. They do that thing where they become the different things. I am a virus. I am the cure. It's not exactly like that, but that's a metaphor for it. It's a combat by visualization. And however you want to work on that. And some visualizations work better than others. Some concepts work better than others, but that is going to change depending on who it is you're in conflict with. But you'll find the ones that work best for you most of the time. And then the other part about the visualization, obviously, is actually how much actual oomph, how much momentum each person has, and just their actual ability to be willing to cause actual harm to another person. Because you have to realize it's hard to actually intend that. Yeah. That's one of the things that is missing a lot of times with this type of work. And that's why the etheric stuff is good when you're having trouble actually getting the will to do it, because that type of stuff like war water. Oh, poppets. I was going to talk about poppets and then I got way off track. So there is essentially different layers of poppets. You can make a poppet that's just a paper doll and, just has a sigil of the you've created to mean that person and information of their birth date and stuff like that. And yeah, I get some kind of connection. But with each level you create of a puppet, the more connected it's going to be to the person. So if you have that information, that's so much. If you get picture of them and put them inside the poppet. That helps connect because now you're getting a reference point of their on their material form. If you get actual hair, stuff like that, that connects it even more. You can get their signature, that will connect it on a different level. There's all these different things you can put into the connection, and each one levels the thing up. Each one makes the poppet more connected to that person. And then it's like the cliche, whatever you say about whatever you do to the poppet is going to have an effect on the person. And, putting needles in them is kind of a weird thing people do. I'm not saying that doesn't happen, especially with the New Orleans style, and they have different spots in their doll where they put the needles to create different things. The way I've learned it, you'd usually then want to take the doll and say bad things to it, tell it bad things are happening to it, do curse work around it. Yeah. If you can get their astrological symbol, you want that on there, especially if you can get their day, especially if you can find out their birth chart. You can get their all the necessary bits for that. Their day, their time of birth, the location of their birth. Oh shoot, what the heck is the other one? But anyways, you get all this stuff to make their birth chart, and then the actual symbol that makes in the little natal chart thing there. How you have a line, they have the lines that it creates as you're putting the astrological chart. You can get a copy of that, put that symbol itself on the doll. That is a great connection because it marks the moment of their arrival and location in this particular incarnation to a very close degree. And that's what we're trying to get is specifics a lot of the time when you're linking the material or mental aspect of the doll. And then the fingernail and hair clippings, that gets that lower etherics, that almost material plane. And then you've got the sigil and stuff like that of who they are, of their name, and other ways to link them to the astral, whatever links you've got. Even eye contact with someone can be a link. And you can actually put that link into the doll by creating a sigil to represent that moment of eye contact, that time that you shook hands and had physical contact. You can place that moment into the doll by using a sigil. And this all connects it back to the poppet. And then, like I said, you can put the poppet into different spell work. You can, if you want, do the needles thing. I don't have a lot of experience with that, so I can't tell you how good or how well that's going to work because I've never bothered. I have smacked a poppet with a hammer, and it certainly had an effect. But to me, you use the doll simply as an anchor point. I was talking about the belly fire earlier, projecting your anger through the screaming the belly fire into the poppet or into the object. This would be thing to yell the poppet at, you burn for eternity, some something like that into the doll. And I didn't actually, that was me mimicking. I've gotten pretty good at mimicking my growl voice. So hurt my throat a little though. But wondering if you could accidentally do beneficial acupuncture for someone that way. Maybe. But that brings up an interesting point. I mean, I kind of wonder, I kind of doubt it because there's intent involved with the needles in particular. I think there's a lot of intent because you poke the doll in this place to cause that, poke the doll in this place to cause that, you know. So I think that there's a lot of intent involved with the placing of the needles. So probably not accidentally, but that brings me to something that I think is very important about the poppets. They're not just for bad. Yeah. This is something you could have of people you want to protect, people you are working with for healing. Have a puppet of the person to do beneficial workings. It doesn't have to be bad things you do with the puppet or with war water. I know we call it war water, but it is connected to the person's blood. And you don't have to put poisons in that water. You could put things to help that person. You could put things to protect that person into that. I mean, war water, I mean, that's get like it's there's a real issue of consent there if you're like, putting antidepressants. Make war water. If somebody start putting antidepressants in it because you think they should be on Prozac. You start putting the war water, making war water with Prozac. I feel like there's a consent issue there. I don't know. That'd be pretty weird, but technically possible, I suppose. Okay, so yeah, the poppets are a profoundly useful thing and do not have to be negative. You can also make a poppet of yourself and use that poppet to cast protections on yourself in a little more indirect manner rather than casting them directly onto yourself. Cast them onto the doll and it affects you. And this brings me to the other point. This is something that is rarely realized but is extremely valid. If someone makes a puppet of you, they are linking it to you. They are essentially making it a representation of you on the altar. There is a line directly from that doll to you. You can turn that line, you can turn that into a line directly from you to that doll on their altar and wreak havoc on them because they made a doll of you. And it is very hard to prevent this. It's extremely hard to prevent this. So when you make a puppet of somebody, you don't want them to figure it out if they know this part. But if you are going to make a puppet to prevent this, when you make a puppet of somebody, when you are not actively restraining it in a spell work, restrain it in some other way. Otherwise, you can come up with some serious freaking problems. Yeah. Fortunately for myself, I've never actually been on the receiving end of this, but I have been on the giving end of this. I have even purposely left hair and fingernails with people with the knowledge that they're going to make a doll. And when they do, I'm going to crawl right inside that doll and show them what for. So do be careful if you're making a puppet, because that can be turned the other way around real quick. Okay, so let's see. What else have we got here? We got puppets. I keep reaching for this tea that's empty. I'm pretty thirsty. Hmm, what else? We talked a lot about the wanting people to know that they're cursed, that they're cursed. Now, making a puppet of someone, setting it all up, doing the stuff to it, putting their face on it, especially if you happen to be someone you have a picture even, and leaving that on their doorstep. They talked about the fetishes. That's one of the best ones possible. Is you leave the doll there for them to find on their own doorstep. And you've actually done all the appropriate work. You've actually done all the correct things, and then there it is, there with them when they find out it's real. Because now they can't do anything to you with the doll because the doll's at their house. And that has that profound psychological impact at the moment of the curse's actual use. That can be profoundly powerful. Okay, so I would be remiss if I didn't bring up some of the booby trap type curse work. I These things, I don't recommend any of them, honestly. Like maybe to ward off an area. Yeah. You could set up something where, like, if anybody that goes beyond this point will be stopped. Aversion sigils, like I have one made from an F and a U that makes people fuck off. It's very effective, but that's different. Yeah. That's not exactly a booby trap. Booby traps are things like goofer dust. And I'm not going to give the recipe for goofer dust. How would you recommend restraining the poppet? Sorry, I didn't see that question till now, Romstead. The most common choice is to put it in a black locked box, like a box that's painted black on the inside and it can be locked from the outside, or a mirror box. Putting him in a mirror box is, if they even get in the doll, that can create all kinds of issues. It's hard to get out of a mirror box. It involves quite a bit. There are ways. Yeah. It's hard to explain that, but there are ways to get out of a mirror box even. But so the mirror box, yeah, can be is like a booby trap for them if they try to get in there in some ways, but there's more ways out. Probably more ideal to have the inside of the box painted black and be able to be locked. So a black locked box is where I would keep the poppet. A black bag can work as well, but you're going to want to tie it well, double bag it, whatever it is you need to do. But you want it to be in some way physically restrained. You can even tie it down, I suppose. But then we start getting a little, I don't know, start getting a little weird having to pop into somebody restrained. I guess in a cage is just as weird in its own way. Anyways, um, let's see what else. I know it is. Okay, the coughing's starting. All right. Yeah, so we've talked about puppets, talked about quite a few things. What haven't we covered? We haven't covered hardly anything on defense. But he covered hardly covered anything on defense in the book we're reading, so I suppose defense would kind of be off topic. That being said, one of the key forms to defense is once again um, cohesion. Cohesion of your astral form keeps it from being harmed. So, this can be done with a personal sigil, visualizing your personal sigil on a daily basis and connecting your astral form to the sigil itself. It can be done with visualizing all the individual chakras on a regular basis. It can be done simply by smoothing the form, simply running your hands over all of your body while focusing on keeping yourself intact and cohesive, imagining each part of your body as you pass over it. It's the same thing we do with hypnosis a lot of the times. Is this well, it's not a lot of the time, but it can be done with hypnosis as you imagine each part of your body relaxing because you're visualizing your form. But if we're going to be doing this, I recommend visualizing an ideal form rather than just relaxing it. So, I mean, it kind of happens with hypnosis work, but eh, that's a little off the subject, really. But keeping your form as cohesive as possible prevents any harm coming to it. Now, um, this also keeps out parasites, things of that nature, and we're actually going to talk about we're going to stick mostly to offense being the best defense in the spirit of the video. Now, all these other things I mentioned, the war water one's a little bit difficult to take possession of in a way that is effective, but there are easy ways to disconnect from it. We'll get to that in a moment. But anything where they have a link to you, there are ways you can take it under control. Yeah. By reaching into that link because that's where they've placed it. They've placed it under under your control. But well, not under your control, but that's intended to be something that you are under its influence, but that influence can go both ways with any spell word, especially anything where they've taken any of your physical links. Like they got some of your hair, fingernails. Um, in the Sorcerer's Shadow Volume 2, I talk about going into the fount position. And going into the fount position makes this much easier. It's almost going to happen automatically if you happen to be in the fount position when they took the um, link. And what do I mean by the fount position? The fount position is a position that you put your form into, your energetic form into, so that any links from your material form are outgoing only. And you can do this with your personal sigil. A lot of times, at least the first time, it should involve a little bit of blood work, but there's a lot of other purposes to being a fount. But it's basically drawing your personal sigil, anointing it with a very small pinprick of blood, and willing yourself to enter into the fount position. Or if you're having trouble resonating with that word, use the intent that has when you charge, use the intent that I am placing all of my material links into an outgoing position or whatever flows good for you. Because that still sounds weird. For me, it's just putting myself into the fount position. And, just a little like pinprick, like from a diabetic pin. Charge your sigil with that and then follow the link that you feel from that connection. Yeah, because you will be able to then visualize after you do this, especially if you put into that intent. Because I mean, it doesn't have to be words. Yeah, you don't have to make a word out of the and make a new sigil. And to take a statement of intent and make a new sigil using your personal sigil, print prick of your own blood onto the sigil, charging it to put you into the outflowing position and into a space where you can feel any links that have been created by your DNA. And then when you see those links, that's how you follow them out to take over the poppet, take over the jar spell, to take over the whatever it is. And really, you can put yourself in a position from there if you add that into your intent where this can happen on an astral level too. So that could include stuff that is working with them making a sigil of you or getting a picture of you or however they've done it. Yeah. But either way, like I said, putting yourself in the fountain position first will help with this. Um, Once you are done with the fountain position, it is often wise to will yourself back out of it. Can you get exhausted putting energy out all of the time? Yes, which is what I was just getting to. If you're not someone who is naturally in the fount position, yes and yes. If you're not someone who is naturally in the fount position, it is best to put yourself back into your normal state afterwards. A lot of people, it's kind of the opposite of being born in a vampiric, because someone who's vampiric is born in the opposite position where they're constantly pulling in, and that comes from a misalignment from the connection of the higher self and the lower self. Higher self and the lower self. That mind body connection I was talking about earlier, the moment where the astral and the material forms meet. And we get the aura that comes out. If that's misaligned, you can get a vampire or you can get someone who is a fount position. Someone who's a fount position is projecting out all the time. Someone who's a vampiric position is pulling in all the time. And yes, people can draw on it. In fact, you're pretty much, if you're in that position, you're kind of pumping out to everybody. You're going to have a little bit of a presence, and your opinion of yourself is going to affect that. If you're in a fount position and you think you're just, oh, so awkward and weird, then that's what everyone's going to pick up off of you. You're going to put out a vibe. And people can intentionally feed on it, but anyone who's intentionally feeding on that has then intentionally connected to your flow. So you're actually the one in the you have the higher ground unless you're getting to the end of a burnout. Because people who are in this position will often come to small burnouts or a large burnout over time. Unless you're born in this position, and even then, it can happen. A lot of people with autism are actually f- born into the fountain position, oddly enough, even though it's considered a, um, you know, this is going to be someone that's just like super charismatic. And that's why some people that actually in their field, like when they're doing their customer service work or whatever it is, some people with autism are very good at these things. I can be very performance at times. I feel I don't know if I don't know. I'm hoping sometimes that comes across in the lives, but I can be pretty good at performance. I am someone who was born in the fountain position, but yes, it can cause burnout. And once you've put yourself in and out of the position with the sigil a few times, it becomes easier and easier to turn it on or off. When someone does draw on it, you can turn the position off or create a conscious block if you don't want them to do that. Or you can add whatever you want to the flow. And like I said, you're the one in the superior position. They're the one putting themselves under your influence when they're drawing from you. That's also why vampirisy is a very dangerous proposition, because anytime you're pulling energy off of anybody, that's what's going on. You're putting yourself under their influence if you were feeding off. Anyways, put yourself into the fountain position, and then, like I said, it will that you will be able to fill those openings to the elixir of your DNA. You can go there, and then when you're there, cast spells with that being your focal point. Go there, create your own sigil for that point, come back, write that sigil down, use that as a way to to cast at them through your puppet that they have on their own altar. Um, War water is a little more difficult. Like I said, you can do this very same thing with the jar spell. They got a lock of your hair in a jar spell, power bundle, anything like that. You can take it over. Turn the things that they're trying to do in there around on them, or cast whatever you want. War water is a little different because it's not really giving you a form. It's just war water. If they've put it in a jar, that's easier. But if it's something where they've got like an open thing of war water in there, because if they put it in a jar, you have a containment, you have a form, you have something you can take over. Now, if it's just like a bucket of war water that they keep in a cauldron and it's more open, for some reason, this is oddly harder to actually take over. There's probably a way, but in my experience with this, the best thing to do is when you get to it, simply scab it up. Make it coagulate. 'Cause it's still your blood. Now it's blood that's been bled. Yeah. I know I said scab it up, coagulate it, but what I really mean is make it blood that has been bled rather than blood that flows within. And there you go. You shed of it. If you bleed on the ground, that it's the cut that's the concern, not the blood on the ground, right? This makes you rid of it. Make it blood that has been shed. Except they put it in a jar, somehow it's easier to actually do the other bit. So if you're doing war water, I might suggest that you do it in an open cauldron rather than use it in a closed jar. And there's the other bit, and an important bit, especially with the jar spells. They're not always going to keep the jar right on their altar. fact, most of the time, you're going to go out and bury it somewhere. So if you get out to it and that's the case, then once again, make it blood that has been shed or hair that has been cut. Yeah. And it's as simple as that. You get out there, you find the connection, and you change it. You turn it over. You say to yourself, "This is not my hair. This is my hair that has been cut. This is a leaving. This is left. This is gone. This is blood that has already been shed." Okay. So let's see what else. I think we're pretty much at the comments, questions, and concerns part of the video. Those of you that have made it this far, thank you so much for sticking with us. Yeah, comments, questions, concerns. I'll open up the floor here for a moment. If anyone has any questions they want to ask about the topics of the live or about anything in general. Also remind you that I do have a membership tier for the channel. Bottom tier being 99 cents, and that would give you some custom emojis to use in the chat, and access to bloopers. And I have other levels above that. They give you access to discounts on my spell work, and even for $9.99 a month at gmail.com. For $9.99 a month, stick breakings or one concording per month. And this is actually if you're working professional in the magical arts, doing an occasional cord cutting, even up to once a month if you have a fairly successful business, is a very good idea. Of course, there are ways to do that on your own, but cord cuttings are one of the few things that it's best to have someone else do for you, because they have essentially have a better angle at cutting your cords than you do. It is difficult to cut all your cords on your own. You can try, and it can be done. And if you remember to cut each one individually at the end of the session, then you don't have to worry about it too much. But if you miss doing that, if you're not something you're doing consciously and you've got a bunch of cords on you, that's the same as an astral parasite, essentially. For somebody, don't cut the cord afterwards. That link is there forever. There's a little bit of flow lingering there if you don't cut that cord, even if you never speak to that person again. So we need to do cord cutting once in a while. And I'm not saying you can only get them by going to my channel. Oh, this is my email here. Somehow that didn't work, did it? That didn't work the way I wanted it to. Just okay, but anyways, and you can get. We'll go in. We're not going to bother messing with that at this point. Yeah, that's my email though, is jesselwittershins@gmail.com. Like that name for a very long time. But yeah, that's for $9.99 a month. You get one cord cutting or 3 stick breakings per month, which you would contact me through my Gmail to get those. And that's probably enough plug for the channel for the moment. What else? Talking about combat magic, covered most of it. I was wondering if spirits could create sigils for other spirits and bind them too. I remember binding, but nothing like sigils. But they do somewhat use rituals or at least perform similar magic. Oh, indeed. Spirits do and definitely have their own form of magic. They have workings that they do that really anything they do works through a similar way that we do magic by moving within the flow of the astral realm. And most of the spell work that we do, especially most sigil work, that's where it's taking place, is on the astral realm. It is in the fabric of the energetic plane because it goes right. The mental plane is information, the astral plane is energy, the process of information and transfer, and the material plane is energy condensed matter. So, on the astral realm, as we go from a concept to a motion, we can change, we alter the flow of that motion or the way the pattern weaves with sigil work. And so those spells take place on the astral realm. And most of the things that spirits do is by doing very similar things to what we do is spell work on that level. And they do have, I mean, sigils isn't the right word for a lot of it, but they do have, I mean, like spirits have a sigil. Yeah, each spirit has a sigil or seal of some form as part of what causes the cohesion of their body. And when they get in combat with each other, that's essentially what they're attacking. They're getting down to the core of it is to try and attack that sigil or the core of what that sigil represents. Now, do they make sigils of each other? Not exactly. Not that I'm aware of. It'd be an interesting concept if such a thing is being done. They certainly have rituals that they perform, and they, ast- uh, astral beings sometimes come into combat. But when I've seen that, seeing in a visualization, it almost looks like how it's when we're fighting. Like there's two beings striking each other in some way. And even when you were participating in astral combat, that's part of how it feels. But it can get real weird. Yeah. You really get in there. I mean, there's times where I'm just a flow of energy, and the other thing's a flow of energy. I'm moving around each other and changing concepts, trying to figure out what pattern can harm the other and block the other. Um, there's even more to it than that. Like there is magic, like a lot of the forms of magic that people have learned was taught to them by one spirit or another. Even some of the stuff that I was calling lower magic, the understanding of how that works was given to us by a spirit because they have that. Well, like I said with the cord cuttings, why it's good to have someone else do your cord cuttings. It is also good to have um well, my brain just gapped. When we're doing cord cuttings, the same difference of the angle that we have to be able to do the cord cutting because we're an objective perspective. The astral beings have a different perspective of the etheric realm than we do because it's the gap between the astral and the material plane. So there are things that they can understand about those things that are even on our side of the etheric realm that aren't as clear to us. Yeah. They have a different, literally just a different perspective on how the weaving of a moment goes. So they were able to see things that we cannot and affect things in a manner different than us, but also be able to tell us how we can affect these things, help us understand the magic that we are working with because they have their second pair of eyes. And a lot of times when we're creating spirit familiars, what we're creating is a second pair of hands work with us from the other side of the veil, the etheric realm. Okay. Um YouTube keeps making the video connection poor to me, basically rendering a non-live broadcast constantly. I do attack their heart center, which is where the casual body. Well, it's more like brain. Yeah, that is the heart chakra is a good place. Like if you're performing an attack, that is a good place to try and cut out. Um, for me, if I'm trying to work this kind of thing, I'm often going for the putting out their flames, the belly fire, if that's the kind of thing I'm trying to do. But really, you just want to cause damage to the natural form in some way. For spirit, okay, for spirits in particular, this is a fair point. They each has a pattern. Each spirit has an inherent pattern inside of them. It's created that creates their sigil or is created by their sigil, whichever way you want to see that. Both pictures are the same picture, so it doesn't really matter. You want to get into that pattern, and you're finding you found a spot in the pattern that you're I get visualizing as that. But for me, there is definitely a pattern to each being, and understanding that pattern and figuring out how to disrupt it is what I have found is the most effective. Often that involves entrapping that being within my own energy and essentially consuming the other being. Now, one thing we need to understand, there's a lot that goes into that. I've got a whole video on eating spirits. That is not a safe thing to do. To be clear, it's not something I'm actually recommending because you need to a lot of being able to understand their patterns and how to disrupt them, and then you need to be able to remove anything that is intending you harm. It is, however, very thorough. Now, one thing that you need to understand: once you perceive, you can never leave, and that includes our opponents. That includes our fallen foes. So we never actually destroy anything. We can change things. We can even do stuff to push a spirit out of our reality. So we are unlikely to deal with it for another 10 billion years. But infinity is a long time. And nothing ever actually dies. So that's something to consider. Strange eons await us all. Anyways, uh, like I said, almost stuttered there. You guys don't get to see that much, except for some of the blooper reels. Sometimes when I stutter, I've got to like basically blah blah blah. Got to do that. Got to wiggle my tongue around some. Um, Fun little side note here for the extra little story for those that have stuck around this long, and then unless someone else. I don't like absorbing spirits because there is a chance I could gain negative patterns. Also, you're correct on that. Spirits can't be destroyed. Well, I mean, their conscious is core versus soul core. Indeed. And that's exactly it. You can absorb negative things. There are ways. I mean, I learned my lesson on that one. Speaking, I was going to tell a story about how I stopped stuttering, but I learned my far tinier than the soul core. Indeed. That bit of perception. In the end, everything continue. Once something starts to perceive, it'll never stop. Once you perceive, you can never leave. Okay. So, yeah. we'll end with this. We'll end with this story here. Um, I do a lot of eating of spirits. I a lot. Well, not a lot, but a lot of times when I have to eat, when I have to deal with the spirit, this is how I do. This is how I did, and I did a lot of it when I was younger. Anyways, um, it's important to do all that bit about the assimilating. You draw them in, and then I usually use a vortex method where I'm spinning around what they are inside of me. And that helps me to discern their pattern and isolate individual variables and tendencies within them and begin pulling out anything that I don't want, isolating it, moving it, and putting it into a whatever, like something that I can eject out of me, the bits that I don't want. Okay, so in this particular case, I'm going to tell the ghost story that I think was connected, but at the very least, it was the one that got finally pushed me to critical mass, if you want to call it that. So my cousin is having a spirit scratch her, like classic scratches on her arms and stuff when she's sleeping, and we can't figure out where they're coming from. And she asks me to deal with it. And I made this little guardian servitor in a like I think it was a dragon, like a plastic dragon thing that I had, and I told her to take it home to protect her. Well, it was something I just made right there on the fly, and it wasn't a very good um anchor for such a thing. So I actually just pissed the thing off and made it worse. And so she winds up calling me. She's like, I need you to come over. This is getting way worse. I'm getting all these scratches. So I got I used to have a cost spirit named Fox. Fox was actually a dog skull who at this point has actually gone on to reincarnate because the call and it became self-aware in and of itself. So that's a whole twisty thing. But either way, at the time I had Fox and I took him with me and I went to the house and I'm looking around and I can't see much, but Tina's showing me where the things have scratched her. And then all of a sudden, Fox is like, okay, well, this is what I see. And I see Fox, and he's like, that's a white flash of like a skull moving down the hallway, and I can actually see him, like in the way that we see with our eyes open. As in, there's a energetic on the edge of material plane, kind of not really seeing it, but seeing it with my eyes at the same. It's on the edge of my vision. I don't know how else to say that. I don't know how else to describe what happens there because I'm not a medium. I'm not right. I'm not one of the people that look and just see a spirit like I see a person. This is a motion that I feel the skull in, and I'm following it down the corridor of the hallway, and then it turns into a room, and then it like points to this spot in the bed where there's this spirit, and this is the link to where it is, and I grab it, I suck it up, pull it into me, and I do all the digestion thing, and while I'm working on that, but I've got people asking me questions, talking to me, distracting me while I'm trying to eat this thing that I've pulled inside of me. And I'm holding it there. I thought I did a pretty good job. Now, on a side note, this is an interesting thing because I found out some ancestors can most definitely affect electronics, and like I said, are aware. I mentioned before about a case where somebody's ancestors intervened to make sure they didn't owe me anything, because right after I do this, I go out into the hallway and Sean, I don't try not to say names, my cousin's husband at is Hawaiian. I have nothing against the guy. Had nothing against the guy. Anyways, in that moment, his phone give beer. He looks at his phone. He says, "Hey, my ancestors do a beer." So he just went into the cousin. went in the fridge and got some beer and gave me the beer. Well, it's the ancestor. He says, my phone says, I should give you a beer. So he gave me some beer. And that was, well, his ancestors making sure that he didn't have a debt to me. Or look, kind of looking out for him. At any rate, back to the story. Like I said, I thought I had the thing digested, but it had everybody talking to me. He distracted me by giving me beer and talking to me about some other stuff. And I'm like, oh my gosh, well, these guys are here, his ancestors, because those are people to respect, the Hawaiian ancestry, some of the spirits from over there. Some of the things that wound up going on between me and him after he did piss me off. I have nothing against him at this point. That very powerful ancestor spirits. That was quite the thing. But we're not going to get into that story today. That's maybe a story for another day. So I ate the damn thing, get interrupted in the digestion cycle quite a bit, and then I go home. For a while, everything was fine. My chest felt kind of funny a few times. But then one day, I'm laying there sleeping and I feel something moving in my throat. Like I don't know how to explain it. I almost felt like a whole bunch of little teeny tiny flies. And I wake up and cough. And when I do this, well, I'm coughing as I wake up and I feel something moving in my throat. And then another thing that was just on the edge of my vision, and it looks like this black mist comes out of my mouth and then darts away before I could grab it or do anything to it. And I mean, things could have been a lot worse. I have another example of something that I had to let go of that I had eaten, and it was actually pulling in my stomach. Like I had to consciously eject because I had never gotten rid of the conscious aspect of the spirit. When you were done, that's what Mary said about if they perceive, you never leave, and you need to be aware of that. If you're eating spirits, you need to make sure you throw their perception outside of you. That's one of the things that gets out, goes somewhere. Don't leave it in you. Because I had another time where something that was like actually pulling around at my guts. But this was the more entertaining story, so we went with this one. I get and it came out, and like my throat hurt for a while, but it appeared in front of me. And then just ran off. Like thing bolted. It certainly didn't come back and mess with my cousin ever again. So no, it worked. Still got rid of the damn thing. But remember to eject the thing's consciousness if you do eat a spirit. And the closer that thing is to the etheric realm, the more dangerous this kind of thing is going to be. Anyways, yeah, unless there's any more questions, comments, or concerns, I do think we're about done for the night. Okay. I think that's it then for the night. Like I said, I really appreciate all of you that have stuck with me here till the end of the live. It's been a great night. I think I don't know, maybe y'all didn't find me as charming without the alcohol. I didn't, but um, like I said, it's important that to me because there is some alcoholism in my family line. I talked about earlier. Most of the people that did talk to me about magic were had been drinking at the time. That's why I can't remember most of the things they ever told me about Thunderbird because I was a little kid and I couldn't figure out why they kept saying fucker bird at me. Oh, indeed, Romstead. We will get to your reading. We will get to your reading perhaps next week if you would like. I have things set up for that. We can do it on the live again next week 'cause I have the other camera again. Well, it's not a great camera, but it's there and you can see it again now. It's happy times to you as well, March of Time. But yeah, like I said, I try to keep tabs on my alcohol use. So was important to me that I made sure I could do one of these lives and enjoy it without any drinking on my end. That doesn't mean I'm not gonna drink on the lives from now on either though. Okay, so that's gonna be it though. Bright blessings and an interesting fate. This has been Sorcerer Tao.